I want you to imagine the person you trust most in this world. Now imagine finding out they didn't just betray you, they rewrote your entire future without telling you, and then smiled at you across a dinner table while they did it. That's not hyperbole. That's my sister, that's Claire. And this is the story of how I stopped being the family backbone and became the family reckoning. My name is Maya. I'm 35. I'm an architect. I design buildings that have to stand for 100 years, so I've learned to be precise, patient, and obsessive about foundations. That same discipline is how I saved $87,000 over 8 years. $87,000. I ate leftovers. I took the bus in blizzards. I said no to weddings I couldn't afford and vacations that would have been memories I now know I would have regretted. Every dollar had a name: rent stabilization, property tax, the down payment on a loft in the old textile district with windows that faced east. That money wasn't just currency. It was proof that I could build something permanent after growing up in a house where everything felt temporary. My parents loved us, but they loved us loudly and inconsistently. Claire was the baby, the artist, the one who felt things too deeply to hold a job for more than a year. I was the reliable one, the strong one. The one who, at 16, was filling out financial aid forms because my mother couldn't face the paperwork. I never resented it. I genuinely loved my sister. I covered her rent when she was 24 and heartbroken. I paid her dental bill when she chipped a tooth. I told myself that was what family meant. You fill the gaps. You don't keep score. When I got a 4-month contract to oversee a restoration project in Lisbon, I was ecstatic. But I needed someone to check on my apartment, water the plants, make sure the pipes didn't freeze. Claire was between jobs again, living in my parents' basement, and she offered. I was so grateful, so proud even, that she was stepping up. I added her as an authorized user on my savings account, not the checking, just the savings, so she could handle any emergencies. The bank warned me. I laughed. I said, it's my sister. She'd rather set herself on fire than hurt me. I was wrong about which one of us would end up burned. I came back from Lisbon 3 weeks early. The project finished ahead of schedule. I was jet-lagged and giddy, already picturing myself walking into the realtor's office with my proof of funds. I logged into my account at 2 in the morning, the apartment still smelling like closed windows and stale coffee. The balance was $412. I refreshed the page. I checked the app on my phone. I called the bank's automated line and listened to that robotic voice say the same number back to me like it was reciting a weather report. 412. I didn't sleep. I pulled up the transaction history and found 6 wire transfers, all made over the course of 2 months, all to the same account. A joint account. A different bank. In Claire's name and the name of her fiancé, David. $86,588. Gone. The next morning, I didn't call Claire. I called my mother. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I explained what I'd found, reading the numbers out like a confession. My mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Maya, you know Claire's wedding is in 3 months. She's under so much stress. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. $87,000 of misunderstanding. She told me to come to dinner that Sunday. We'll all talk it out, she said. As a family, I should have gone to the police that morning. I should have gone to a lawyer. Instead, I went to dinner because I was still Maya. The fixer. The one who believed that if I just explained clearly enough, if I just showed them the hurt, they would rush to repair it. The dining room table was set like it was Christmas. Claire was wearing a new dress, cream-colored, probably bought with my savings. She stood up when I walked in and hugged me like I hadn't just discovered she'd hollowed out my life. You're back early, she said. David and I were going to surprise you. I pulled out my phone. I showed her the transaction history. I didn't yell. I think I was too devastated to yell. I just asked why. She didn't flinch. She sat back down. She smoothed her napkin over her lap and said, I needed it more than you did. I remember the sound of the grandfather clock in that moment. Tick, tick, tick. She explained it like she was reading a grocery list. The venue required a deposit. David's parents had promised a down payment on a house but pulled out at the last minute. She was drowning, and she said, I was always so good at floating. I had my career. I had time. She needed to start her life now. I looked at my father. He was staring at his plate. I looked at my mother. She reached across the table and touched Claire's hand. Maya, my mother said softly, you're the successful one. Claire's always been the dreamer, she needed this, you'll make it back, you always do. I felt something crack inside my chest, not my heart, something deeper, the part of me that had been holding up the ceiling for all of them. I needed that money, I said. My voice sounded strange, small. I was buying the loft next month. I had a closing date. Claire rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them. You can rent for another year. I've been renting my whole life, it's not that big a deal. My father finally spoke, let's not ruin dinner. We'll figure something out. Family doesn't keep tabs, but I kept tabs, that was the problem. I had kept every tab and they had cashed every single one of them. I left that house and I drove for 3 hours. I didn't know where I was going. I ended up at a rest stop, staring at a vending machine, wondering how I had become the villain in my own robbery. For 2 weeks I tried to be the person they wanted me to be, the understanding big sister. I told myself maybe they were right. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe $87,000 was a small price to pay to keep the peace at Christmas. Then I found the messages. Claire had given me her old laptop. She'd forgotten the password, she said, and she needed some photos for her wedding slideshow. She asked if I could wipe it and reinstall the operating system. She knew I was good with computers. She'd always known what I was good for, but she hadn't logged out of her cloud messages. And there, synced to the laptop I'd agreed to fix for her, was a group chat between Claire, her best friend Jenna, and her cousin Amy. 3 months of messages. I shouldn't have read them. I know that. But I also know that if someone burns your house down, you're allowed to look at the gasoline receipts. They had a nickname for me, the bank, not Maya, not my sister, the bank. Claire had written, she's so predictable it's almost boring. Cried a little, then left. She'll sulk for a week and then help me pick out centerpieces like nothing happened. Jenna, are you worried she'll do something? Claire, Maya, please, she's too busy being the martyr. She loves having something to sacrifice. It makes her feel superior. Besides, I covered my tracks. I told the bank it was a gift for tax purposes. She won't do anything legal. She can't stand the idea of the family being mad at her. Then a photo. A selfie of Claire in the wedding dress she'd bought. The caption, paid for by the bank. Best investor I ever had. Faced with tears of joy, I sat there for an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something cold and final settled over me. I realized I had been playing by rules that nobody else at that table was following. I had been bringing a conscience to a knife fight. I closed the laptop. And I called Sarah Chen. Sarah is a litigation attorney who specializes in financial fraud within families. When I told her the story, she didn't say, but she's your sister. She didn't say blood is thicker than water. She said, do you have documentation? And I realized I had been documenting my whole life without knowing it. I had every pay stub, every tax return, every email where I'd told Claire the money was strictly for emergencies. I had the bank records showing the 6 wire transfers. I had the original authorization form where I'd specifically limited Claire's access to emergency maintenance of the primary residence. I had the text messages she'd sent me from Lisbon, asking about my trip, never once mentioning she was draining my account. Sarah was thorough. She was also furious on my behalf in a way my own family hadn't been. We discovered 3 things that changed everything. First, Claire hadn't just transferred the money. She had forged my signature on a gift letter to the IRS, claiming I'd given her $40,000 as a tax-free family gift. That was federal fraud. That wasn't a family dispute. That was a felony. Second, she'd used my laptop, the one I'd left at my parents' house, to make the final 2 transfers. The IP address matched perfectly. She'd done it from my childhood bedroom while eating my mother's leftover lasagna. Third, and this was the one that made my hands shake with a feeling I didn't recognize as power until later, Claire had opened a credit card in my name 3 weeks before I came home. She'd charged $12,000 on it. Wedding flowers. A photographer. A honeymoon deposit to Santorini. She hadn't just stolen my past. She'd stolen my future and my credit score in one move. Sarah laid out my options. We could go to the police with the identity theft. We could file a civil suit for conversion and fraud. We could notify the IRS. We could inform her employer. Claire worked as a junior compliance officer at an investment firm. Her entire job was verifying that financial transactions were ethical and legal. The irony was so thick I could have built a wall with it. I chose all of it. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted restitution. I wanted my money back. I wanted my name cleared. And for the first time in my life, I wanted the people who had made me responsible for everything to finally be responsible for something. We started with the bank. Sarah sent a formal fraud claim with the forged gift letter and the IP logs. Within 48 hours, Claire's joint account with David was frozen pending investigation. Then the IRS. Sarah filed a report for fraudulent tax documentation. Claire had used that forged letter to avoid gift taxes. The IRS doesn't care about wedding drama. They care about signatures. Then Claire's employer. Sarah sent a professional, unemotional letter to the firm's ethics board, outlining the fraud, the identity theft, and the credit card opened in my name. She included court documents and police report numbers. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't need to. I didn't call my parents. I didn't confront Claire. I let the paper do the talking. 2 weeks later, my mother called me. She was crying. Claire had been escorted out of her office by security. She'd been suspended indefinitely pending an internal review. The firm had a zero-tolerance policy for financial misconduct, especially from compliance officers. David, her fiancé, had found out about the frozen account and the IRS notice when he tried to pick up his tuxedo and his card was declined. He'd called the bank. They told him there was a fraud hold. My mother said, "Maya, how could you do this to your sister? She's going to lose everything." I said, "Mom, she already took everything. I'm just taking back what's mine." The wedding was canceled 3 days later. David called me himself. He was ashamed. He was angry. He hadn't known. He thought the money had come from my parents, a loan they were keeping quiet. When he found out Claire had stolen it, forged documents, and opened credit in my name, he ended the engagement. He said he didn't know who she'd become, but he knew he couldn't build a life on that foundation. He also did something I didn't expect. He sold the house. The one Claire had put my down payment toward. He split the equity and sent me a check for $43,000. It wasn't the full amount, but it was more than I thought I'd ever see again. He included a note, "I can't fix what she did, but I won't profit from it." The civil suit was settled before it went to trial. Claire didn't even show up for the first hearing. Her attorney requested a default judgment. The judge ordered full restitution plus damages for the identity theft and the fraudulent tax filing. With David's check and the court order, I recovered $94,000, more than I'd lost. Claire was fired from her firm 2 months later. The IRS fined her for tax fraud. The credit card company pressed charges for the fraudulent application. She moved back into my parents' basement, but this time, nobody called me to ask if I could help with her legal fees. I bought the loft. I have those east-facing windows. I sit there some mornings with my coffee and I watch the sun come up and I feel something I can't quite name. It's not happiness. It's not even peace. It's the absence of a weight I carried for so long I thought it was part of my skeleton. My parents called me last month. They wanted to have dinner. They said Claire was seeing a therapist. They said she was sorry. They said family was important. I told them I agreed. Family is important. Which is exactly why you don't steal from it. You don't forge its signature. You don't mock its pain in group chats with your friends. I told them I'd be willing to have dinner. In a year, maybe 2. But only if Claire could look me in the eye and explain exactly what she did, without crying, without making herself the victim, without asking me to be the strong one who forgives first. They haven't called back yet. If you're watching this and you're the reliable one in your family, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me. Being strong doesn't mean being inexhaustible. Being loyal doesn't mean being limitless. And being the person who holds everything together doesn't mean you have to let people tear pieces off you until there's nothing left to hold. I spent years thinking that love meant being the emergency fund, the backup plan, the person who never said no. I thought boundaries were walls that kept people out. I was wrong. Boundaries are the foundation that keeps the whole structure standing. Claire wanted a wedding. She wanted a house. She wanted a life she hadn't earned, and for a long time she wanted me to be the cost of it, but I'm not the cost anymore. I'm not the bank. I'm not the backbone. I'm just Maya. And for the first time in 35 years, that is more than enough.